Hey guys, tonight we don't knock. Not here. Not on this particular evening in the 6th year of Kutko, when Kyoto exhales, a mist so delicate it drifts like silken ghosts between lantern-lit rooftops. The wooden gate ahead doesn't announce itself. It leans into the quiet, its grain smoothed by time, by wind, by the soft rustle of countless sleeves brushing past. You pause not from fear, because you've long since left that behind, but from reverence. Because this isn't just a gate, it's a threshold, a hush, a moment that asks you to vanish into something older than words, softer than memory, and truer than anything you thought you came looking for. Your hand rests on the wood. It is neither warm nor cold, only present. Like a monk's silent breath, you slide it open. At once, the outside world sighs behind you, the clatter of sandals on cobblestones, the distant chime of temple bells, the gossip of vendors hawking dried persimmons, all of it fades. You step onto a path of stepping stones, each one carefully placed to guide your gait into humility. The garden around you is curated serenity, mossy rocks positioned with the same intent as brushstrokes in a Zen painting. A trickle of water echoing from a bamboo pipe. A white heron lifts into the fog. You bow slightly, even though no one is watching. But of course, someone always is. The host has anticipated your arrival with such precision it feels supernatural. You have been invited not as a guest, but as a participant in a ritual older than many dynasties. You are now part of a performance without applause, a theater with no stage, where the only script is silence and the only costume is awareness. The tea house itself squats low in deference to the act it shelters. Its walls are made of clay, reeds, and time. You stoop to enter through the Nijiriga crawled through doorway barely 3 feet high, designed so even a daimyo must bow before entering. Yes, even those who wear swords must leave them outside. The tea room is the great equalizer. Inside, 4.5 tatami mats. No more, no less. The size is exacting, sacred, and mathematical. The room smells of cedar, aged paper, and the faintest trace of incense, something piney. Perhaps, though you can't be sure, everything is arranged with austere affection. A scroll hangs in the tokonoma, its brushwork rippling like water. Today it reads, Ichigo Ichi, one time, one meeting. It is a reminder, you will never live this moment again. You kneel, not yet speaking. The host enters with the silence of falling ash. He bows, you bow. There is no hierarchy now, only two human beings sharing the breath of the world. The ceremony begins not with tea, but with cleaning. The host purifies the implements, the tea bowl chowan, the scoop chashaku, the whisk chasen, the water container mizusashi. You watch this with the intensity of someone decoding sacred geometry. Every gesture is slow, deliberate, and beautiful, not despite its repetition, but because of it. Here's a surprising fact. In some lineages of Chanoyu tea ceremony, the time spent cleaning the tools exceeds the time spent drinking the tea. It's not hygiene, it's humility. To purify the tools is to purify the heart, and while the tools are simple, they are often priceless. That bowl before you, glazed in earthy blues and flecked with kill scars, may be a raku masterpiece, older than any tree in your neighborhood. Steam rises. The kettle sings, not whistles, not roar sings. The sound is called matsukaze, the wind in the pines. The host lifts the ladle, pours hot water into the bowl with a reverence that feels like prayer. Powdered green tea matcha is scooped in. He whisks it not to froth, but to awaken, and then finally he turns to you. 2 hands, 1 bowl, offered forward like a secret. You bow, take the bowl, turn it twice to avoid sipping from its front. You drink. The taste is both bitter and round, vegetal and earthy, like drinking the ghost of a forest floor after rain. The warmth spreads from your lips to your lungs. For a moment, you forget your name. You place the bowl down and admire it, not to flatter the host, but because the bowl, too, has had a journey. It has known fire. It has been broken and mended with gold. In the art of kintsugi, that reveals rather than conceals. You wonder, quietly, what it would be like to treat your own scars with such honor. Scholars still debate the origins of the tea ceremony's aesthetic code, wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection. Some argue it blossomed purely from Zen monastic discipline. Others trace its rise to Murata Juke and the 15th century tea masters, who rejected ornate Chinese porcelain in favor of rustic bowls that seemed to whisper of rain-soaked hills and fleeting sunsets? Was it spiritual rebellion, or simply the scarcity of good imports during turbulent decades? The truth, like the mist outside, remains elusive, but now is not the time for analysis. The ceremony winds on, slow as a falling leaf. You are offered a sweet, perhaps a square of yokan, or a mochi flower, so delicate you hesitate to bite. It's a dance of opposites, the sweet before the bitter, the silence before the slurp, the rough clay against your polished fingertips. Laughter is not forbidden, but here, it is rare and reverent. Yet in a corner of the room, the host has placed a single camellia bloom in a bamboo vase. It has bloomed too early, a little awkwardly, and you think, for just a breath, that it looks like someone trying very hard not to sneeze during meditation. You smile. That's enough. Outside, the sun has risen behind the fog, shadows shift, time passes unnoticed, not because it is wasted, but because it is cherished. The host bows again, signaling the end. You bow deeper. No one says thank you, not with words. Gratitude here is woven into the thread of each movement, the echo of each breath. You step outside. The world has not changed. The vendors still shout. The temple bell still tolls. But something inside you's more quiet and impossibly old has shifted, and behind you, the wooden door slides shut. Fade out. Bottom of form. It begins not with speech, but with water. You hear it long before you see its soft rivulet spilling from a bamboo ladle into a stone basin. The steady dripping rhythm like a monk's slow breath. You lower your shoulders without meaning, too, as if your bones have remembered something your mind has forgotten. This isn't just a courtyard. This is a gate into time itself. And today, time will flow differently. You step forward on a narrow path of flat river stones, smooth and ancient, each set precisely to slow your pace. Your foot brushes a fallen camellia blossom. The air smells of pine and wet earth. There are no signs, no explanations. The garden doesn't offer answers, it only asks that you be present. A tiny stream curls along your path like a silver ribbon, guiding you toward the tea house. The water is not just decorative. In the 1603 Kyoto of Tokugawa Ieyasu's rise, the design of such a garden is a kind of silent philosophy. Every element, moss, rock, bambooes, arranged not for beauty, but for presence. A single leaf balanced on a ripple speaks louder than 100 lanterns. You are not merely walking to a building. You are being prepared, scrubbed clean, not with soap, but with silence and ritual. Now you pause before a stone basin. This is sukabai, a cleansing ritual. You bow slightly. You lift the bamboo dipper with both hands and rinse your left hand, then your right, then your mouth, then the dipper's handle. It's not for hygiene, it's for humility. You are about to enter a space that does not belong to you. In 1603, this basin stood between the worldly and the sacred. It still does. You approach the Nijiriguchi, the crawling-in entrance, only 2 feet high. It demands you kneel to enter. Warriors once set aside swords. Lords set aside rank. Here, everyone is equally low to the earth. You bend your knees and pass through, brushing the rough frame with your sleeve, and emerge into a room where the rules of power have dissolved like steam from a kettle. Inside, the light is soft and indirect. The walls are made of mud and bamboo, but they feel warmer than marble. You sit on the tatami, legs folded beneath you, spine alert but not stiff. The host gives no speech. Instead, there is silence, the kind that thickens the air, that requires no filling. Silence is the host's first gift. The kettle sings quietly over a charcoal brazier. A single scroll hangs in the alcove. It says, "Ete fi, ichi go, ichi one time, one meeting." You've heard this phrase before, but here, under its gaze, it feels like a commandment. You will never live this moment again, not like this, not with these people, not in this exact slant of light. You glance at the Chaji guest book, the thick paper pages inked with past gatherings, names of samurai, poets, and even a disguised Christian priest whisper from its binding. Each ceremony recorded with the same quiet weight. Historians still debate whether these ceremonies served as covert political meetings or spiritual sanctuaries. Perhaps both, perhaps neither. Like steam, truth resists capture. The host moves like a shadow, neither rushed nor slow. Every motion folding the cloth, setting down the tea scoop, Ladling water is an answer to a question you didn't know you asked. He does not look at you directly, but he sees everything. You feel seen not in your appearance, but in your attention. It's not about performing the ceremony correctly. It's about being completely there. And so, you are Jew. You notice the curve of the bamboo ladle. You feel the way the tatami gently pushes back beneath your knees. You count the swirls and the grain of the wooden beam above you. You are learning to see again. Not with your eyes, but with your breath, your bones, your stillness. Tea is not served yet. First, the utensils are purified. The host wipes the tea bowl with a folded silk cloth fukusin. Slow, deliberate motions. It is not cleaning, it is communion. Each gesture is inherited from generations of tea masters before him. When Sen no Rikyu taught this way in the previous century, he was not designing a performance. He was sculpting a mindset. A surprising fact, Rikyu once asked his disciple to arrange flowers for a ceremony. The disciple chose rare blooms, arranged them meticulously. Rikyu looked once, then plucked all but a single blossom and left it alone on the mat. Now, he said, you've created beauty. Here, less is not minimal, it's spiritual. The kettle begins to hum louder, a rising note, like a question waiting for an answer. The host lifts the lid with emotion so fluid it resembles calligraphy. You feel a strange ache, not from anticipation, but from the beauty of the waiting. You are not rushing toward the tea. You are arriving into it, and finally, the tea is prepared. The green powder match is spooned into the bowl. Hot water added, then whisked into a froth. The whisk's motion is precise, not too fast, not too slow. The tea is not stirred. It is awakened. The bowl is placed before you. You bow. You turn the bowl twice clockwise, then raise it. The rim touches your lips. The tea is bitter, thick, bright as spring moss. You drink it in 3 sips. The last sip is savored with an audible breath, a note of thanks. When you place the bowl down, it feels heavier than before, as if it now contains memory. And you look around not at decorations, for there are few but at shadows. Light from the small paper window catches the side of a worn wooden post. You realize it is not straight. It leans slightly, intentionally. It is called wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection. In a world obsessed with polish, the tea ceremony celebrates the crack in the cup, the warp in the grain. What matters is not symmetry, but sincerity. Time here is not a line. It is a circular bowl passed from hand to hand, emptying, filling, emptying again. The silence returns. But now it is different. Now, the silence feels full of breath, of warmth, of something ancient and unnamed. Perhaps this is the point. To feel the presence of the moment so deeply that you forget your name, your status, your stories. To become simply someone who drinks tea. Outside, a nightingale sings. Or maybe, it is only the wind in the bamboo. Fade out. The brazier glows like an ember breathing beneath the hush of the room, its iron mouth exhaling a thread of steam that curls into the shadows. You kneel once more, your legs folding into the rhythm of stillness. The tatami beneath your knees warmed by the faint breath of coals. There is a kind of devotion in the way the kettle sings, not loud, not intrusive, but a susurrus of warmth, like the murmuring of distant bells across a mountain pass. You are not alone. You sense the mothers in the room, each body stilled into presence, backs straight not from stiffness but reverence. No one speaks, no one dares to fragment the calm. It is not a silence of absence, but of fullness, the kind that gathers like mist in pine woods after rain. Everything here has weight, the single ladle, the bamboo whisk, the ceramic bowl cradled like a fragile moon. In this moment, objects have gravitas, even shadows carry intention. The tea master moves with movements so controlled, so measured, they might be mistaken for stillness. Yet you perceive it, the choreography of precision, where every flick of the wrist echoes centuries of discipline. His sleeves do not flutter, his gaze never wavers. He handles the tools with a reverence, usually reserved for scripture, for the touch of sacred stones. You watch as he dips the ladle into the kettle, drawing up a measured arc of steaming water. He does not spill a drop. You wonder if time itself has been trained to hold its breath in his presence. In 1603, Japan teetered between war and peace. The Tokugawa shogunate had just risen from the ashes of fractured daimyo power struggles, and a precarious stillness had settled over Kyoto. It was not peace, exactly, but an armistice of exhaustion. Samurai sheathed their swords more often than they drew them. castles ceased to burn. But it was here, in these quiet corners of culture, the tea rooms, the calligraphy studios, the no stages where the soul of Japan stitched itself back together. You've read that the tea ceremony shinoyo was once a political weapon, a way for warlords to demonstrate refinement, to elevate brutality with a veneer of grace. The great general Toyotomi Hideyoshi had been known to host elaborate tea gatherings, sometimes inviting enemies, only to have them assassinated hours later. A bowl of tea could become a trap, a ceramic cup, a gravestone. Now, here, in this softened era, the ceremony has settled into something more subtle, not war's extension, but its antidote. Still, nothing about it is accidental. The thickness of the scroll's calligraphy, the scent of crushed camellia on the rim of the cup, the faint irregularity in the glaze that draws the eye to imperfection, all carefully composed. Even the choice of tea bowl matters. Is it Korean Edo ware, praised for its rustic charm, or local raku, the invention of a Kyoto potter whose descendants still shape clay with their bare hands? You notice the tea master chooses a bowl with a lip worn by centuries of fingers. A shallow chip near its base has been left unrepaired, an intentional flaw. You recall a phrase, wabi-sabi, the beauty of the imperfect, the transient, the incomplete. In the West, a cracked cup is thrown away. Here, the crack becomes the cup's soul. The water is ready. The tea master stirs matcha into the bowl, and the green deepens to the color of moss after thunder. You smell it before you see it, the sharp vegetal note that cuts through the air like a forest clearing after rain. The whisk circles and lifts, foaming the surface to a delicate froth. Again, no words. The offering is silent, but it reverberates louder than any toast. You receive the bowl with both hands, bowing with your body rather than voice. The first sip is bitter, sharp as pine bark, then softens into sweetness, like the echo of honey on stone. You're surprised by how thick it is, not like tea at all, but more like a drinkable meadow earth, leaf, fire. You have never tasted anything so present. In the West, tea is often a distraction, something sipped absent-mindedly while reading or speaking. Here it is, the whole point. It is said that tea rooms in Kyoto were designed deliberately small, sometimes with ceilings low enough that even a daimyo had to bow to enter. Authority dissolves inside these wooden wombs. Rank, wealth, and status are all left outside with the shoes. It's a form of enforced humility wrapped in architecture. The tea room is not a place of display, but of disappearance. Scholars still debate the origin of this profound aesthetic. Was it Murata-juke, the 15th century Zen monk who infused tea with spiritual gravity? Or Sen no Riki, the philosopher-practitioner, who famously ordered a garden to be swept clean, then had cherry blossoms shaken over it, so that impermanence would be part of the beauty? Riki had died by ritual suicide after falling out with Hideyoshi, but his aesthetic quiet, stark, defiant still lingers in every corner of the room. He believed that simplicity was not absence, but essence. You watch as another bowl is served, not to you this time, but to the guest beside you. The ritual repeats, almost identically, but not quite. There's a slight delay in the ladles, descent, a new angle to the whisk's turn. Like a snowfall, no flake, identical, but each part of a greater stillness. The ceremony is repetition as reverence, pattern as prayer. Time slows, or perhaps it ceases altogether. The steam continues to rise from the kettle like a quiet offering to the rafters. Outside, unseen but imagined, the garden breathes moss catching dew, stone lanterns collecting shadow. You sense that even the insects have paused, caught in this hush. There's no need for speech. The tea speaks, the water speaks, even the silence speaks. You've never known so much to unfold from so little. You've never sat so still, so long, and felt so deeply moved. Nothing happens, yet everything changes. When the final bowl is served and sipped, the ceremony does not end but gently fades, like ink dissolving in water. The tools are cleaned with the same care as when they were presented, each gesture completing the circle. Then comes the closing bow, not dramatic, not grand, just a breath of movement. You return it, sensing that you are not leaving the ceremony, is leaving you, like a boat untethered from the dock. The tea lingers on your tongue. The memory lingers in your limbs. You step back into the world, not cleansed, but clarified. A soft wind moves the pine boughs outside. Fade to stillness. The day begins to fall into itself like paper folding into its own crease. You notice this, not by glancing at the sun, which now glows diffused through layers of cloud and incense, but by watching the ash in the brazier, how it leans, and sighs with a kind of resignation only time can teach. The brazier no longer crackles with youthful energy, it murmurs, it contemplates, each ember seems to possess a secret, and you sit across from it, wondering whether silence is the only true answer to what burns. You stretch your knees beneath you again, aware now of the dull ache settling into your bones, like silt in a riverbed. There's a rhythm to pain when it becomes familiar. The body yields to it the way old doors yield to wind, and as you adjust your posture, the floor responds with a breather creak, ancient and restrained as if it too is practicing the art of presence outside. The wind has changed direction. You can't see the breeze, but you feel its fingerprints along the paper walls. Dust lifts and resettles, pine needles shift in place. In the distance, the shrine bells do not ring. Today, instead, there's a kind of hush over the city, as though the streets themselves are participating in the tea ceremony from afar, unwilling to interrupt. The scroll in the alcove remains unchanged, yet somehow, it says more now than it did an hour ago. Its brushstrokes are no longer just gestures, they are seasons condensed into ink. You can't read the characters directly, but you feel them, an admonition to live lightly, perhaps, or an invitation to disappear completely into the moment. Every part of the room has softened, not just from the low light, but from a shared understanding between objects. The kettle no longer steams as furiously. The ladle's handle now lies at a different angle, a degree shifted by use, not intent. And the host, though you do not look directly at them, moves, like mist, through the chamber, each motion stitched with gravity and reverence. You observe how even the objects breathe in cycles. The chowan, warm to the touch earlier, now holds a quiet chill. The natsume, resting in the host's palm just minutes ago, now waits alone in its corner like a thought that has run its course. Everything once touched is released, and you feel the lesson settled in your chest. To hold is to let go. This part of the ceremony is neither beginning nor end. It is a held breath between sips, a mountain pass where clouds nestle low. You exist in this margin, this velvet hollow between intention and completion. There's a particular serenity in existing without demand. No performance, no proof, just being. And in this stillness, your mind begins to notice what it usually misses. A spider moves above the doorframe. You watch its deliberate descent, thin threads catching the glint of light, like invisible kanji. Its descent is not rushed. It too obeys the rhythm. Each leg touches down as though time itself were thick and required negotiation. The tea ceremony has taught even the insects to move with awareness. What scholars still debate about this era of tea is not the taste or the tools, but the purpose behind the simplicity. Was it rebellion masked as elegance? A political act shaped like a poem? Or was it merely a retreat from the chaotic swirl of Edo's shifting power, a quiet protest against excess? Some argue that the silence of the tea room was louder than any drumbeat in Kyoto. You shift your attention to your breath. Inhale, exhale, not to control it, but to observe it, as you might observe snowfall. The tea room offers no reward for effort, no applause for enlightenment. Instead, it meets you where you are, and quietly invites you to notice. Just notice, nothing more. This is where the practice of wabi beauty in imperfection, in impermanence takes its most tender form. You gaze at the shallow chips in the tea bowl's glaze. Not flaws, but stories. The host chose this vessel for a reason. Perhaps it belonged to someone long gone, or perhaps it broke once and was mended with lacquer and gold. The way kintsugi transforms damage into honor. You are drinking not from a cup, but from time itself. A surprising fact. In the year 1603, as Tokugawa Ieyasu rose to power and unified the nation, it was considered more noble to serve tea with restraint than to display wealth. The lacquerware was dark, the utensils simple, the room itself designed to erase the self. The greater the authority outside, the more the tea room whispered against it. It was here, within these 4.5 tatami mats, that hierarchy dissolved, and presence prevailed. The aroma of charcoal drifts closer. The last water has been ladled. You hear the soft clink of bamboo against iron, a sound so light it barely exists, and yet it touches something deep in you, like a memory you never made but somehow recognize. You bow it, because it is required, but because the moment bows first. The host cleans the utensils with care that borders on love. You realize the ceremony has always been for this, the act of caring for what is transient. A whisk, a cloth, a scoop, all things that will return to their shelf, as if nothing happened, yet changed forever by their brief service. Outside, the sun has dipped behind the hills. Light slants in, angled like the final brushstroke of a Sumii painting. The garden is quiet now, its stones casting longer shadows. You sense the room exhale. The ritual is complete, but nothing feels concluded. It is as though the ceremony has only thinned the veil between what is and what might be. No one speaks, nothing is said, and yet everything has been expressed. You rise, knees trembling, but heart somehow weightless. The threshold beckons not to return you to the world you left, but to reveal that it never truly disappeared. You were always here, only now more aware. Ash falls softly between the steps, a quiet benediction. And as you walk back into the breathing hush of Kyoto, your footsteps echoed not with noise, but with knowing. By now, the walls breathe with you. Every grain of tatami beneath your knees hums with memory. It's not a song, exactly, but a kind of quiet resonance that builds across time. One inhalation, one brush of sleeve, one bead of dew from the bamboo ladle. Your body has softened into the space. Your mind, once buzzing like a cicada at dawn, has quieted to the rhythm of boiling water and unseen wind. The ceremony has passed through its hinge, and now begins to fold inward like a scroll drawn close. You do not rise, you do not speak, you are simply here. Outside, the sun has shifted. The gold dapples have deepened into rust. Shadows stretch, like brushstrokes. Somewhere, a crow calls and vanishes into the silence. The charcoal has done its work first, bringing water to a boil, then retreating into embers. The warmth it offered was not fire, but presence. Not drama, but duration. Now, the final bowl is prepared. There is no haste in the hosts. Movements, no trace of performance. Each motion is a conclusion, and a beginning and arc that finishes itself. The tea scoop, carved centuries ago from weathered bamboo, is lifted as if weightless, then set down with care. It is not just a utensil, it is a poem written in shape. The chastened bristles softened from many whiskings, dances in the bowl with quiet intent. There's a sound to it, not quite music, not quite breath, just motion, folding time. You watch, not with curiosity, but absorption, astonishing. You think, how ritual reshapes perception. In the outside world, you would never notice the sheen of ceramic beneath sunlight, or how water gathers in the hollow of a ladle. But here, inside this slender wooden chamber, even silence has texture. The air itself presses gently against your skin, reminding you of your own impermanence. Your hands extend, reverently, to receive the final bowl. It is warmer than you expect. The glaze is mottled, earthy like the skin of a stone beside a mountain stream. Nothing is symmetrical. The lip dips slightly. The color fades in places, but it fits perfectly into your palms, as if it were made for this exact moment. Perhaps, in a way, it was. You turn the bowl, bowing inward as you raise it. The matcha, now cool enough to drink, carries more than taste. It carries memory. The steam curling upward carries the hours that led to this point, the garden path, the purification, the scent of smoke. You drink slowly, and the world narrows. To that one act, bitterness, yes, but beneath it, a soft sweetness, subtle as pine needles under snow. Somewhere in the layered hush, a scholar once wrote, tea is not a drink but an offering to time. And indeed, that is what this has become. The final sips settle into you not as flavor, but as stillness. You do not rush, you do not analyze, there is no need. You are part of the unfolding, not a guest, not an observer, a thread in the fabric, a whisper in the bowl, a shadow on the floor, and then, the return. The bowl is cleaned with care, purified, not to erase, but to honor transience. Nothing in the tea room is held longer than necessary, nothing is kept for possession. Each object fulfills its purpose, then returns to rest. The scoop, the whisk, the cloth, all laid down like a child tucked into sleep. The host moves without drama. There is no applause, no conclusion, only the soft click of ceramic, the hush of cloth on bamboo. Outside, the light has mellowed to that rare gold of early autumn. In the distance, bells ring faintly from a temple behind cypress. The air holds a quiet coolness, not yet winter, no longer summer. You feel both light and rooted. When you stand, your knees remind you time has passed, but your spirit floats between stillness and flight. You step through the sliding door. The garden has changed, or perhaps you have. Where once you noticed only moss, now you see 100 shades of green. The water in the stone basin ripples without wind. A single camellia petal rests on the surface. There is nothing remarkably, and yet it becomes everything. You bow once, not toward anyone, but toward the moment, and then the path. The stones beneath your feet guide you gently away, but something lingers, a residue of calm, the echo of stillness in a clay cup. The ceremony hasn't ended, it simply continues elsewhere. Each breath, each step, an extension of the same unfolding. The scent of cedar clings faintly to your sleeve, your hands remember the bowl's warmth, and in your chest, a softness, a reverence that does not fade. Scholars still debate whether tea was ever meant to be about tea. Some say it was political theater, others call it Zen in disguise. Still others insist it was aesthetic training, taste cloaked in incense and etiquette. But none of that matters now, because you were there. You felt the temperature shift with a breath, you saw sunlight catch the rim of a bowl, you heard water become silence. You became, if only for a flicker, part of something older than memory and quieter than thought. And that is enough. The tea hut disappears behind you, tucked into the foliage like a forgotten shrine. Its roof is only straw, its walls only clay. Yet it holds something that will travel with you, unseen but undeniable. In the hush of crowded cities, in the clatter of bells and distant drums, you will remember this, that stillness is not absence, but depth. That ritual is not repetition, but refinement. That in a single sip, whole seasons can live. The world will pull you back. It always does. But now you carry a cup within you, forever full. You walk the path, not as the person who arrived, but as the one who listened. Not to words, but to water, to fire, to stillness. Though the ceremony has closed its circle, something in you remains open. Outside, Kyoto breathes beyond moss, beyond gate. Somewhere, drums beat for the shogun. Somewhere, poets fold verses into silk sleeves. Somewhere, the world spins fast with ambition. But your steps, slow and steady, carry the hush of the tea room. There is more to see, more to feel. The kettle has quieted, but the fire is not out. You do not know where the path will lead, only that it does not end here, not yet. It begins quietly, like an unnoticed draft slipping beneath a closed door. At first, you think the shadow pooling near the tatami edge is a trick of candlelight fluid, uncertain, as if ink has soaked into the grain of the floor. But the shadow does not behave like shadows should. It lingers where light falls. It pulses slightly, as though breathing. You look again, only to find it's migrated, not by inches but by angles, now hugging the base of the alcove wall where a painted scroll hangs. The scroller sumie, rendering of a mountainous landscape, should be still. But it isn't. The waterfall in the artwork glistens faintly. Water ripples, not metaphorically, but with a kinetic shimmer. Droplets glide down the silk's surface in a manner that denies ordinary physics. Pines sway in a breeze that stirs neither your robes nor your hair. You blink twice, once slowly, and the image settles again static, as it should be. But there's a memory in your eye now, and it's wet. The tea master continues whisking matcha with a practiced, rhythmic slowness, and though he makes no gesture toward the alcove, his chin tilts subtly, acknowledging what you've seen. The air thickens imperceptibly. That slight depression in the cushion beside you, it hadn't been there a moment ago. An odd chill kisses the space near the hearth, as if someone exhaled over the coals. You sense presences, not in sight but in sensation, a congregation of half-formed memories congealing around the edges of the room. A whisper of damp silk, a citrusy echo of pickled plum. Beneath the tatami, something shifts. No sound, only pressure, like breath held too long. Centuries bleed into this. Silence. Here, tea is not brewed merely for the living. Edo-era tea houses, especially those constructed in the Sukiya-zukuri style, often incorporated deliberate irregularities, warped beams, asymmetrical shelves, slanted stones. These were not aesthetic accidents. They were openings, breaches, invitations. The architectural imperfections offered quiet lodging to spirits who had not finished tasting the world. The asymmetry humbles the eye and confuses malicious intent, it is said, but it also calls in the beautiful dead. There are whispered, some lacquered into tea chests that speak of ceremonies continuing after the host has passed. Guests who arrive late to a gathering centuries finished. Teacups lifted by unseen hands. In one account from 1752, a tea master was buried with his favorite bowl. For 3 consecutive nights after the funeral, neighbors reported the sound of whisking from beneath the earth. A panel beneath the tatami shifts, revealing a hollow just large enough to fit a doll's tea set. Thimble-sized bowls, a fingernail-sized brazier, a kettle no bigger than a coin. These are not toys, but offerings. Every tea plant, the master once explained, has its kodama tree spirit, bound not to bark and branch, but to flavor and time. A droplet of matcha is poured onto the miniature set. There is no reaction, but something adjusts in the room's pressure, a minor key resolving. Behind the hearth, a single camellia blossom lies on its side. It wasn't there before. Its petals are dry, as though it's been waiting centuries for this exact moment to wilt. You glance again. Now it's upright. The crawl-through door at the tea house's entrance, the Nijiraguchi, is often described as a humbling gesture, compelling even the proudest samurai to bow before they enter. But folklore suggests another function. The 60-centimeter height serves as a spiritual threshold. Demons, their horns too tall to pass, are unable to breach it. This boundary has held for generations, mostly, but tonight, the smell of something, sweet overripe yuzu or sake, left on corklix in from the garden. Something waiting beyond the threshold finds a seam. At the cup's rim, your fingers brush, not clay, but a slick frost. It is midsummer, the coals haven't cooled. The hearth glows gently, and yet, the bowl is cold to the touch. Not unpleasantly, like an object left in moonlight too long. You drink. From the shadows near the garden, a cat watches. Not a black cat in the ordinary sense, though black it is, but one whose eyes do not reflect light so much as absorb it entirely. It has not blinked in 20 minutes. Somewhere between your first and second sip, it had appeared, then never moved. Its tail curves around a stone lantern, unlit and yet somehow luminous. In some rural districts, cats who lived beyond their 14th year were thought to see the spirit world, not as a veil, but as a map. The master lifts the kettle slightly higher, allowing the hot water to pour with a sigh. That sound soft as rain on linen masks, another, subtler one. Like breathing, but inward. The room inhales you. No one speaks. But silence here is dense with names. Lord Matsudra, who declared that no tea could reach perfection, and died mid-bowl Oke, who drowned in a fermentation vat, her breath still felt against apprentice necks adjusting their kettles. And Lady Shimizu, who mourns whenever Yuji leaves are used, her tears forming as condensation on porcelain rims. Names, not said aloud, but steeped into the very grain of the wood, the clay of the cups, the air between movements. Your hand hovers briefly above the tatami, and you feel it, that nearly imperceptible tremble. Not an earthquake, a memory perhaps, or the weight of all who ever knelt here before you. Time does not move evenly within these walls, nor do the guests. Some come to sip, others come to stay. When the shoshi panels slide open at the hour closest to silence, the interior vanishes, not metaphorically. The walls dissolve. Moonlight pours across the tatami, not in beams but in lines sharp as brushstrokes. It spills precisely, like calligraphy ink, revealing the tea room for what it truly is, a frame, a liminal vessel between interior and cosmos. You sit not inside a room, but at the very center of a moonlit ink painting. Outside, the garden is unlit, and yet the stone lantern near the pond casts shadows too crisp to be natural. Bamboo rustles, though there is no breeze. The scent in the air is mixed, cold iron, fresh camellia, and the faint musk of something ancient and vegetal, like water drawn from the bottom of a well. Every detail feels simultaneously staged and accidental, as if the world has paused its usual performance and is now showing you its dress rehearsal. A chowan is placed at your side, its wide mouth catching the moon's reflection so perfectly. It appears intentional. In that instant, the tea becomes a mirror, the ceremony a celestial ritual not requiring human witness. The tea's surface reflects the moon's full face. You hesitate to disturb it. Time has pooled there, round and luminous. The brew is different tonight. Its taste is cooler, more mineral. It bears the temps of oxidized metal, like the memory of a bronze mirror held too long. Legends suggest the moon pulls not only tides, but taste-altering the key of water, especially during the full phase. An old treatise, penned in 1661, claimed that lunar teas had a lighter key, easier on the organs. Tonight, this notion does not feel like folklore. It feels like science, forgotten by choice. You sip slowly. The liquid feels structured almost architectural, as if someone has arranged the molecules into pillars and beams. Aftertaste unfolds in layers: stone, air, distance. You can taste the concept of reflection itself. A flute from bamboo so ancient its surface resembles the grooves of a storm petrified mid-motion. When played, the notes are visible, not metaphorically. The vibrations rise in the tea itself, distorting the moon's reflection into concentric waves. Each tone a ripple, each pause a stillness. Sound is not an interruption but a participant. You wonder if it's the music that holds the room together. Then comes salt, not from the table, but from a tiny jar labeled with a single ideogram for moon. The salt is harvested, it is said, from tide pools during the equinox, when lunar pool concentrates minerals in precise geometries. A pinch is dropped into the tea, the reflection fractures. The orb divides not violently, but delicately. One moon remains, another drifts sideways, as though shy. Yin and yang, not opposed, but adjacent, balanced. The second moon seems to quiver at the edge of the bowl. Its glow is paler, tinged with an inner blue, like flame seen through glass. Above, 3 cherry petals descend. They spiral, not downward but inward, pulled gently toward the bowl. They land in a perfect triangle around the second moon's reflection. Not even one stirs the surface. The geometry is too precise to be random. You glance upward. There are no cherry trees in bloom this season. Not here, not now. An edge of your sleeve grazes the tatami, and you realize something is different. The straw feels reversed, as if you are no longer touching the mat, but it is touching you. The sensation is neither warm nor cold, but intentional. In some Shingon teachings, the moon is not a symbol, but a gate. What you see tonight may be a window, or a mirror looking back. Somewhere behind the sliding door, a bell chimes. Once, softly, not a temple bell, nor a wind chime. More like a memory of a bell, echoing from within the hollow of a bone. You don't turn. The tea is still speaking. Your posture shifts, not by choice. Your back straightens, arms relax. Your breathing matches the rhythm of the ripples. It is as if the moonlight has entered your veins, whispering instructions in the language of mineral and tide. You become part of the ceremony, at a guest, not even a witness, but a filament. Moon-viewing tea is more than ceremony. It is astronomy performed in sips. It is the turning of constellations disguised as hospitality. It is the sky leaning down to see itself more clearly through you. The phase of the moon alters not just shadow and shape, but the temperament of the tea. On full moons, the brew opens. On new moons, it contracts. There are scrolls describing this, inked by monks who never left their mountain temples. Their observations etched not with telescopes, but taste. You become aware of the ceiling, or rather, of its absence. The roof no longer exists. Above you, the sky opens, wide and ink-black, stippled with stars, and yet no wind touches your skin. The space remains sealed, but somehow infinite. A moth flutters in, luminous and nearly transparent. It hovers near the kettle, drawn not by heat but by rhythm. Its wings beat in synchrony with the flute's last note. Then it lands, lightly, on the salt jar's rim. It closes its wings, and becomes still, like an ideogram waiting for interpretation. The master remains motionless, but you sense his awareness, not just of you, but of every presence in the room, seen and unseen. The cat from earlier has returned, though it makes no sound. It perches near the door, ears alert. Its gaze shifts subtly between you and the bowl, as if weighing something. You take the final sip. As the liquid leaves the cup, the second moon fades, not extinguished, but recalled. The petals dissolve, the salt ring breaks. The tea begins to close itself again. Gently, the shoji reassert their place. The walls reclaim their boundaries. But the sense of scale has changed. The room feels smaller now. Or perhaps you've expanded. Your fingers press lightly against the tatami. A faint warmth radiates upward, human maybe, or something older, left behind. And though no one speaks, you know, Something ancient has seen you, and tonight it chooses to remember. The bowl rests empty in your hands, but the weight it leaves is not gone. The moonlight no longer pools in its hollow. Instead, it lingers in your throat, gentle and silvery, like breath caught at the cusp of a thought. Something about your vision has changed, not clarity, more like layering. The world no longer appears as a surface, but as depth stacked upon depth, like lacquer painted over centuries, each layer thin but permanent. The tatami beneath you grows softer, as though steeped in moss. It takes a moment to realize the scent has shifted again, not tea, not salt, but loam with earth disturbed after long sleep. The hearth still glows faintly, but the light no longer radiates warmth. It feels reversed, drawing in temperature instead of giving it. A slow inhalation of energy, not exhalation. In the far corner of the tea room, behind a pale reed screen, a texture ripples. Not motion, not shadow, something between the two. You do not blink, yet its contours shift subtly, as though made of steam or breath. It might be silk, it might be bone, it might be time, bending its threads around you. There is no wind, but the scroll in the alcove sways slightly. Tonight's hanging is unfamiliar, an ink circle drawn with a single stroke, ensu surrounded by nothing but blank space. As you look closer, the brushwork seems to tremble, not because of your breath or the air, because it remembers the moment it was made. Every stroke holds the ghost of the wrist that painted it. Beneath the scroll, the floorboards seem to shimmer. Then, slowly, they fade, or rather, they peel away like gauze or illusion. Where wood should be, water appears, not deep, just enough to reflect. But what it reflects is not the room above. It shows another tea room, inverse and undisturbed, submerged not in water, but in memory. A koi flickers through the scene, leaving no wake. You realize you are looking through the floor into an older ceremony, one that mirrors this one. Gesture for gesture, breath for breath, but not entirely aligned. The guests below raise bowls slightly before you do. Their sleeves flutter before yours shift, a half-second difference, as if they are rehearsing the moment before you live it. There is a term for this, Meino Katachi, the form that comes before, not simply preparation, but prefiguration. In some lineages of tea practice, it is believed that every gesture you perform already exists as a trace, waiting for you to fulfill it. Not destiny, memory, but not your memory. You lower your gaze and see your own reflection in the mirrored floor, but your face is not alone. A second version of you kneels beside the first, same robes, same posture, but eyes closed, as if listening to something you haven't heard yet. This version does not breathe, but it pulses faintly, like a shadow that has been fed. A draft sweeps across the room, but none of the paper panels move. It brushes the nape of your neck and carries with it the scent of wood smoke, citrus peel, and something darker, faded sandalwood, mixed with ink spilled from a calligrapher's sleeve. You taste regret on your tongue, though nothing has been spoken. The cat has vanished again, or perhaps it never left and has simply become part of the darkness. From the hearth, a soft rustling rises. The coals shift, though no one touches them. Ashes collapse in on themselves, revealing a curved shard buried within. Master retrieves it silently, presenting it not to you, but to the space between you both. It is a fragment of celadon, pale green and impossibly thin, a piece of a long shattered bowl. Historians still debate the origins of the ghostwares of the Muromachi period ceramics, so delicate that many believed they were formed by spirits, not potters. This shard glows faintly in the low light. Its glaze carries the faint sheen of frost. Beneath its surface, cracks bloom like plum blossoms, kintsugi without gold, as if the vessel mended itself by memory alone. The master places the fragment into a smaller bowl you hadn't noticed before. You lean forward slightly. Inside, the bowl holds no liquid, only vapor. Yet, as the shard rests within it, the vapor swirls into form. Tea, briefly visible, then gone. But its presence is unmistakable. It has been served. It has been tasted. There are customs older than words, offerings not made to gods, but to absences. You sense that this is one of them. The walls shift again, not in shape, but in time. The tea room feels older now. The grain of the wood carries centuries. A crack along one beam runs not just lengthwise, but calendar-wise. Wound-marking storms survived, names forgotten, tea spilled in grief. Somewhere behind you, a floorboard creaks, but no one walks there. A memory surfaces, not yours. A woman in indigo robes kneeling in this very spot, hands trembling over a bowl she does not drink from. Her hair is pinned with bone. Her mouth moves in silence. You do not understand her words, but her sorrow enters you like steam, slow and saturating. The moment dissolves before you can hold it. The scroll flutters again. The ensued begins to fade, not smudged, but lifted, as if the ink has become air. In its place, a different image appears, an hourglass, but the grains do not fall downward, they ascend, a reverse flow of time, climbing back toward source. You close your eyes. When you open them, the water beneath the floor is gone. The inverse tea room has vanished, only tatami remains. Only the bowl, empty again. The coals settle into silence. The night returns to its ordinary depth, but nothing is quite ordinary. The air holds a pressure that feels like having been sung. 2. Your limbs are slower now, as if wrapped in memory. The tea remains in your veins, moving in rhythm with something older than your breath. There is no bell to close the ceremony, no curtain to fall, just a long exhalation from the hearth, as if the room itself sighs. You rise not because the ritual ends, but because you have been returned. The door remains shut, but it is not locked. It begins again with scent. Not steam, not incense, but a pale fragrance rising from beneath the tatami mineral. Green, impossible. You tilt your head, and for a breathless moment, you hear water underfoot. A subtle, constant lapping, as though the entire tea house floats above an unseen tide. The tatami sighs faintly beneath your weight. The floor does not shift, and yet something has turned beneath it, like a hidden tide turning at the solstice. The master moves in slow, practiced circles, his robe whispering over straw mats that seemed less solid than before. Each step lands just so weightless, reverent, like a priest avoiding seams in a sacred scroll. His hands are clouds again, curling over the chowan with gestures memorized by more than flesh. And now, the whisk sounds different, less rustle, more ripple, as if it skims not tea but water, deep and ancient, tinted with moss and rain memory. You lower your gaze, and suddenly, the floor opens, not splits, not cracks, opens, transparently, as if the tatami has become a veil of paper, thinned by time or breath. Beneath it is a pond, enormous, quiet, dense, with koi moving so slowly they seem suspended in syrup. You glimpse lily pads the size of umbrellas, their edges scalloped like imperial seals. Lanterns float upside down beneath the surface, their orange glows distorted like blurred lanternfish. The water is not water, but a dream of water thicker, lit from within, infused with history. You blink. The garden vanishes. Tatami returns, but the scent remains. This is not your first tea ceremony, but this is the first where reality fails to reassemble properly afterward. Legends speak of hidden gardens beneath certain tea houses, Foki no Niwa, gardens of sealed wind, spaces unreachable by shovel or map, planted for guests who no longer walk the earth, but still require beauty, designed by moonlight, watered by remembrance. No path leads to them. They manifest only when the correct tea is served by hands who have never broken a promise. You suspect that tonight, both conditions are met. The tea in your bowl is iridescent, not green, but layered opal, pearl, meteorite, a shifting surface that reflects your face, not as it is, but as it might have been had you made a different vow decades ago. You try not to look too long. The first sip is earthy and unfamiliar. It tastes of ancient bark and stone lattice. There's the umami of seaweed, yes, but beneath it lies the unmistakable salt of unshed tears. It is not sadness, it is remembering, the kind that does not belong to you, and yet arrives wearing your heartbeat. From the corner, a lacquered box appears. The master does not reach for it. It opens itself. Inside are pressed flowers, dried, but not dead. You recognize none of them. One resembles a camellia, but has 7 petals. Another glows faintly from the center, like phosphor trapped in pollen. These are flowers from a garden that blooms outside the wheel of seasons. Perhaps they grow beneath the floor. Perhaps they grow in memory, or on the other side of forgetting. The tea grows cooler, heavier, wiser. Now a breeze enters not from the open shoji, but from below. It lifts the edge of your robe and stirs the fire's ash, which dances briefly, then settles in patterns that echo a calligraphy you've never studied, but instantly understand. The kanji for return, the kanji for empty, the kanji for listen with your bones. You remember an old tale, a monk who poured tea for a ghost every 7th night of the month. He never saw her, but each morning the bowl was dry and the tatami damp. No one believed him, so he stopped. On the 8th night, the tea-house roof caved in, not with stone or weather but with silence so dense it became weight. The structure collapsed inward, gently, as though bowed by regret. Such is the cost of stopping hospitality too soon. The master sets a second bowl beside yours. This one is not for you. You do not see who receives it, but the cushion beside you darkens, briefly, as if someone kneels. Out in the garden, you glimpse movement. Again, not the cat this time, but something taller. A figure garbed in layers of indigo, walking with the pace of someone remembering how to walk. Their head does not turn. Their feet make no sound. They pass through the moonlight, and the moon dims slightly in acknowledgement. Then they vanish into the shadow of the pine. A tiny bell rings, not from above, but from beneath the floorboards. You sip again. The koi beneath the tatami surface briefly an illusion. Surely, and one of them stares up through the translucent mat. Its scales shift in color, bronze to gold to obsidian. Its eyes are entirely white, like porcelain. Before the glaze, they say koi that live long enough become dragons. They grow beards of fog and whiskers of cloud. They rise from ponds only when called by tea masters whose hearts have cracked just enough to let in the sky. You wonder if the koi are waiting for the master's heart to crack, or yours. A crack does appear, but not in the floor, in the bowl. A hairline fracture. It does not leak. Instead, a single drop of silver seeps upward from it, hanging like dew, hovering just above the glaze. You watch, transfixed, as the drop lifts, floats, then evaporates without heat. You are not sure how long you've been here, or if you ever arrived in the ordinary sense. Your knees ache, but not from posture, from holding still while the rest of the world shifts. Around you, the shadows have stopped obeying the rules of firelight. They stretch in new directions, cast by memories rather than mass. And now, music, not played, remembered. A shamisen, heard in childhood, in another house, long since demolished. The pluck of its strings stirs something inside you. A sadness, too old for tears. A joy too gentle for celebration. You breathe. The scent beneath the tatami intensifies. Not decay, not growth, something in between. The tea has gone cold, but the air around you warms, subtly. The master finally bows not to you, but to the empty bowl between you. A bow of thanks, of closure, of renewal. Then the scent fades. The koi vanish. The floor is solid again, but you know what you saw. You were there. You are still there. Some part of you will always be sitting beside the second bowl, beneath a floating garden that no one can reach. Perceptor with tea. It is not immediately clear when you began to descend. One moment, your knees are still resting upon the familiar tatami, warmed faintly by the slow burn of ember-red charcoal, and the next, the floor beneath you yields not with a jolt, but with the softness of moss relinquishing its hold on stone. You are not falling. The room is deepening. The space below you expands, not by force but by invitation, like a well remembering its depth. Around you, the paper walls remain intact, their washy translucence glowing faintly. Yet everything behind them has vanished. No bamboo garden, no distant shishiodoshi, no echo of insects. You are suspended in a geometry that no longer adheres to architecture. The master has not moved, yet his presence now hovers at a distance, not measured in meters but in eras, as if the centuries themselves have stretched to accommodate the widening gulf between ritual and revelation. What unfurls before you is not darkness, but a field of lacquered earth, gleaming as though polished by countless hands, perhaps hands that exist now only in the calligraphy of memory. The ground is smooth and reflective, not black but the deep maroon of dried persimmons, and it pulses with warmth, like a ceramic bowl just lifted from the kiln. Beneath your bare feet, the earth breathes. There are no walls, yet there are boundaries, drawn not by architecture but by intention. You feel them in the pressure behind your eyes, in the delicate resistance of each breath. You are within a kiln of memory, a crucible that tempers not clay but consciousness. Somewhere in this space, tea is still being prepared, but no longer for refreshment. It is being brewed to test the tensile strength of spirit. In the center of this horizonless chamber stands a table not of wood, but of glazed porcelain. Its surface a storm of cobalt and ivory, frozen mid. Its legs are impossibly thin, yet it holds weight with indifference, as if it has never needed permission from physics. Upon it rests a single tea bowl, unlike any you have seen. It glows faintly, its glaze alive with the iridescence of beetle, wings, deep-sea mollusks, and old, storm-washed glass. This is not merely a chawan, it is a reliquary, the container of something older than steam. As you approach, you feel it before you see it, a hum, soft as breath against silk, vibrating not in the air, but along your nerves. The closer you come, the more the bowl emits a resonance that dissolves your awareness of self, as if each footstep sheds layers from your being, memory, expectation, identity, all peeled away until only the observer remains. You are not being drawn toward the bowl, you are being remade in its presence. And then, the tea arrives. You do not see it poured. There is no kettle, no ladle, no hand, but the bowl fills silently with a liquid that cannot be confined to description. It is not green, nor amber, nor red, not translucent, nor opaque. It is the color of thought before words. The steam rises in calligraphic strands, curling into ideograms. You almost understand codes of conversations you forgot you once heard. As you lean closer, you realize the tea smells like none you've encountered. It carries the pet of forgotten gardens, the salt of sealed letters, the rust of ancient hinges. It is not inviting, but it is not repellent. It is true. You do not drink. The master does not beckon, but the tea begins to affect you nonetheless. Memory, once obedient to chronology, fractures into a kaleidoscope. You remember walking this path as someone else. Remember hosting a ceremony before it was ever built. Remember hands that held bowls like these and released them not to gravity, but to time. Yet you are still here, watching the surface of the tea tremble with meanings you cannot name. Scholars of the early Edo period believed porcelain, when glazed with minerals from sacred springs, could preserve the spiritual resonance of vanished places. A bowl fired with crushed jade from Mount Osa, they claimed, could whisper the thoughts of monks who died meditating beside sulfur vents. Others swore by bowls embedded with shards from shattered mirrors used in rituals, believing such mixtures allowed glimpses into parallel lives. These accounts, derided by modern historians, were not kept in temple archives but in private journals, often annotated in margins with rice paper bookmarks, dyed in seasonal flower tinctures, sakura for spring delusions, chrysanthemum for autumn truths. You begin to suspect the tea before you contained such histories, not in infusion but in intention. To sip it would not be to ingest a flavor. It would be to consent to entanglement. A sound breaks the stillness, not a voice, not a bell, but the slow unwrapping of silk. A figure emerges across the porcelain field. She does not walk so much, has unfolded from the glaze itself. Her sleeves are endless. Her hair is pinned with silver leaves. Her face is unreadable, not for lack of features, but because it shifts, as if viewed through water. She is the last breath of someone once worshipped, but never named. Her role is not to speak, it is to witness. She sits opposite you, never breaking eye contact, though her gaze is as soft as temple incense. She lifts the bowl not to drink, but to let the steam bathe her face. Her skin flickers with age and youth, like wind over water, like a candle hesitating to live or vanish. When she sets the bowl down, the steam does not fade. It rises between you in symmetrical spirals, forming a bridge of breath. The bowl is turned toward you, not past, but simply rotated, a question, silent but final. You lift it. The weight is immense, not physically, but psychically. You feel not just the ceramic, but every hand that shaped, held, shattered, or revered it. You feel the craftsmen who whispered sutras as they mixed glaze. You feel kilns that sang as they cracked from overuse. You feel tea masters who poured their doubts into each brew, hoping heat might cleanse what meditation could not. The tea touches your lips. It is bitter, like memory revisited, then sweet, like truth endured, then gone. Around you, the porcelain horizon begins to crack, not in destruction, but in return. The glaze peels back into the shape of tatami. The bowl cools. The breath between you and the woman fades. She bows not with submission, but with recognition. Then she is lacquer again, unmoving, her story sealed in the table's surface like an insect in amber. You are alone once more, but not empty. The master returns, though you never saw him leave. He places a fresh cloth on the floor, straightens a fallen petal. The ritual resumes. But you know now the tea was never for refreshment. It was remembering. The The porcelain silence does not follow you back to the surface. It remains where it must. But in your veins, something now rings clearer tone, struck once, long ago, and still echoing. You have long since forgotten the passage of time in its conventional form. No clock marks the hours here, and the sun has become an idea rather than a force. The light that illuminates the tea room no longer feels terrestrial, but subterranean, through memory, refracted by ritual, softened by the presence of things that are no longer alive but refuse to vanish. When you inhale, you no longer take in air, but the weightless residue of centuries burnt pine, stone-ground tea, breath lost to bowing. The tatami under your knees feels warmer than before, as if the earth beneath it is no longer sleeping, but watching. Something has shifted. The hearth, once quiet with coals, now glows with the hue of molten amber, and the kettle sings in tones that cannot be heard by the outer ear. They ring along the ribcage instead, like ancestral bells calling memory to attention. You begin to sense that this ceremony has never taken place entirely above ground. Beneath the surface of etiquette and practice, beneath the arrangement of flowers and the curvature of bowls, there is another layer, a subduction zone of spirit and salt, where all forgotten rituals continue their slow spiral into permanence. The hearth before you, so humble in appearance, is the mouth of a deeper place. Its smoke does not rise but curls downward. The scent is not charcoal, but a memory of riverbed silt, cold iron, and lacquered cedar. You lean closer, not out of curiosity, but as one might lean toward the wind, letting it press against the skin in recognition. And that is when the tatami yields again, not with collapse, but with an almost maternal generosity, and the room folds gently downward. There is no stair, no passage. You do not descend so much as you are accepted. The air becomes cooler, more mineral, tinged with the scent of clay and the faintest trace of lotus root. Your surroundings shift, not with speed, but with a kind of gravitational sigh, as if the tea house itself is exhaling, easing you further into its dream. When your feet find ground again, it is not floor, but stone polished by centuries of ritual kneeling. This chamber, far beneath the hearth, is not large, but it is complete. It is circular, with a low domed ceiling and walls carved directly into the earth, their surfaces smooth as bone and marked only by the impression of palms and fingers, as if those who built this place pressed their souls into the clay as they shaped it. No light source is visible, and yet everything glows with a soft blue luminance, like moonlight captured in the veins of glacier ice. At the center lies a circular basin carved into the stone. It is filled with water so still, so dark, it seems not liquid but lacquer. Floating atop this black mirror are 10 tea leaves. Each leaf is intact, impossibly preserved, with their veins rendered in silver thread. They do not drift randomly, but hold positions as precise as the arms of a constellation. One leaf begins to spin slowly, then another, until a gentle spiral begins to form a clockwise dance of meaning. The air thickens. You are not alone. Around the chamber, seated in silent veneration, are silhouettes, not people, but impressions, thin outlines of presence, like shadow puppets made of ash and intent. They are dressed in layers of antique robes, their hands forever mid-gesture, one pouring, one lifting, one bowing, one still. These are the officiants of a ceremony that never ended. They do not breathe, but they remember. Their silence carries a density that reshapes your own posture. Without instruction, you bow lower, your spine remembering humility it never learned. One of the figures rises not in motion, but in recognition. It tilts toward you. Something within you tilts back. There is a bowl here, placed upon a stand made of woven reeds, lacquered to obsidian smoothness. The bowl itself is small, humble, yet its glaze bears the delicate pattern of river currents, as if the entire basin of the Como River had been pressed into ceramic form. You do not reach for it. Instead, your fingers find a bamboo dipper carved so thin it flexes like grass. You lift it from the basin. The water is cold, older than language, and when it touches the bowl, the surface ripples not outward, but inward, as though seeking a center it has not yet known. The leaves respond. Each one shifts slightly, then stills. Their arrangement now forms a symbol you cannot read, though you recognize its feeling, a convergence, a folding in, a closing of the circle. The steam that rises from the bowl carries the scent of wet stone and mountain moss, but also something else, something not from this world. It smells like a gate, not wood or iron, but the sensation of passage. You lift the bowl, and for a moment, your reflection within it is not your own. It shows you as you once were, as you could have been, as someone who lived long before tea and language were separate things. You sip. The taste is indescribable, not because it is exotic, but because it is so familiar it renders language unnecessary. It tastes like every goodbye spoken over a closing door, every tear that touched wooden floorboards, every whispered name lost to wind passing through temple eaves. The warmth spreads from your throat outward, not merely into your limbs, but into the space around you, as if your presence is being drawn out, vaporized, and offered to those seated silhouettes who continue their motionless vigil. An inscription appears across the curved wall of the chamber, not carved, but illuminated, revealed by the warmth in your breath and the condensation of memory. The characters shift as you read them. One moment, they speak of return, another, of loss. Then, simply, water remembers. It is a phrase that feels like it was once told to you as a child, perhaps whispered while your hair was being combed, with fingers no longer living. It is then that the basin begins to rise, not by mechanism, but by transformation. The stone of the floor becomes water. The chamber becomes sky. You find yourself floating, not swimming, not flying, but held. The silhouettes dissolve into river mist. The bowl in your hands is no longer ceramic, but something older, a cupped palm. You understand now. Every bowl is a hand extended across time. Every sip is a pact between eras. When your feet find the tatami again, the hearth is quiet. The kettle no longer sings, but the sound lingers in your ribs. The master has not moved, but his presence carries a deeper resonance now, as if the space between him and you has been bridged not by words, but by something more ancient. The act of returning. You straighten your spine. You adjust your robes. You offer a bow, and the river beneath the hearth continues to flow, even as the fire fades. You awaken not from sleep, but from stillness, the kind of stillness that pools in the bones rather than the mind, the kind that arrives after a long forgetting. The tea room no longer feels like a room. Its borders have dissolved, almost imperceptibly, like frost evaporating under the gentlest morning sun. The walls breathe. The ceiling undulates like silk. Light does not enter from a single source, but filters in from every direction, soft and pearlescent, as though the sky has been woven into the air itself. You are not alone, though you are the only figure visible. Around you, presence coils like incense, smoke, delicate, fragrant, and uncontainable. It no longer matters whether the guests are seen or unseen. They are here. They have always been here. The tatami beneath your knees is damp, not with water, but with memory, cool, porous, saturated with the silent weight of everything left unsaid. You press your palms to its surface and feel something pulsing beneath the weave, not a heartbeat, but the rhythm of something older, the footfalls of ancestors on forest paths, the splash of ladles into spring-fed basins, the faint hum of prayer recited through chattering teeth in winter mornings, long forgotten. You remain bowed, not out of ritual obligation, but because rising would be a betrayal of the depth you have reached. Your body understands reverence now, without instruction. From somewhere behind the lattice screen, a wind sighs, not a breeze from outside, but a draft from a different season, entirely fragrant with plum blossom, pine resin, and the sharp sweetness of persimmon. You do not know how it arrives, only that it brings with it a shift. The tea room tilts, not literally, but perceptually. What was once above is now beside. What was outside is now within. You blink, and the paper walls have become rice fields under moonlight. The brazier becomes a crater lake. The hanging scroll elongates, twisting into a mountain path, climbing forever toward a summit that recedes with every step. This is not illusion. It is memory in its truest form, layered non-linear, folded like cloth and steeped like tea. You recognize places you have never been, people you have never met, and yet their names rest on the tip of your tongue, as natural as breath. There's no distinction now between the host and the guest, the living and the dead, the vessel and the poor. Everything is ceremony. Everything is steeped. A chowan rests before you. You do not remember it being placed there, but its presence is not surprising. It is black matte, unglazed, its rim slightly cracked in one corner. It is not beautiful by conventional standards, and yet, as you gaze into it, you see stars, not reflections, but actual stars, teen specks of burning distance floating in a vast, dark, curved sky. They move, slowly, with purpose. You lean closer. Within the bowl is a night sky, and beneath that, a memory of your own hand offering tea to someone long gone, a child, a mother, a stranger with kind eyes. The bowl holds them all. You have poured before, you have been poured for. You lift the bowl. It is lighter than it should be, and warmer. The heat does not come from the liquid, but from the moment itself. You drink, and the flavor is unlike anything you've tasted before. Not floral, not bitter, not umami or salt. It is the taste of recognition, of finally knowing the shape of your own silence. The tea settles in your chest like a lantern, casting soft light through ribs and lungs, illuminating everything you thought you had buried. Then, the sound begins, faint at first, like the clink of porcelain on stone, the distant murmur of footsteps in gravel, the shuffle of silk across wooden floor. The sound builds, not in volume, but in intimacy. It circles you. It comes from every direction. It is the sound of generations pouring, bowing, rinsing, serving, sipping. Thousands of gestures repeating through time, like beads on an invisible string. You are not at the center. You are one bead among many. The floor ripples, not water now, but lacquered wood, polished by reverence and repetition. The tea room lifts not physically, but metaphorically, like a temple slowly ascending into cloud. The ceiling opens, not with creak or collapse, but like a lotus, peeling back, layer by layer to reveal a sky that is not sky, but the inside of a bell. You are inside the chime now, the resonance of something struck long ago. The sound vibrates through your skin, through your memories, through your name. You think of all the hands that shaped this experience, not only the master before you, but every hand that ever planted a tea bush, every hand that ground the leaves, that fired the bowls, that carved the inkstones, that copied the calligraphy. You'd think of monks in frozen temples brushing away ash to prepare the hearth, of children pouring imaginary tea into real wooden cups, of soldiers drinking quietly before their final orders, of ghosts, of gods, of you. The master moves now, for the first time in what feels like centuries. His hands are slow, but not old. They pour without pouring, lift without touching. His presence folds into yours. He becomes mirror. You bow. He bows. You rise. The walls return, but they are thinner now, transparent as mist. You see the garden outside. The stepping stones gleam with dew. A single heron stands among the reeds, unmoving, eternal. A breeze carries the scent of fresh tatami, plum blossom, and an unfamiliar spice, something from the continent, perhaps brought by a trader who never returned, but whose satchel now rests in a Kyoto storeroom. You do not move to leave. There is no leaving. Time has returned, but it no longer binds. The hour of the ox may be long past, or yet to arrive. The sun may be rising or setting. It does not matter. What matters is the cup, the warmth in your hands, the lingering taste. That is no longer tea, but understanding, not of a thing, but of everything. A final gesture remains. You place the bowl down. It makes no sound, but the room sighs with completion. The master's gaze meets yours. His eyes do not ask, nor do they answer. They reflect. That is enough. You turn toward the sliding door. It opens by itself. Beyond it, the garden stretches wider than it should. A path of stepping stones extends not into the moss, but into fog. You do not know where it leads. You step forward anyway. Behind you, the coals dim. The scroll gently flutters. A breeze kisses the lip of the bowl, and the final pour continues somewhere, always forever steeping in the space between what has been and what is about to begin. It begins with a whisper, but not the kind made by mouths. A resonance, a hum too low for hearing, more felt in the spine than perceived by ears. It threads through the stillness of the tea house like a crack in fine porcelain, subtle at first, then growing wider with every heartbeat. You notice it while cleaning the calligraphy brushes, when the bristles begin to shiver in the water jar. The ink dances without cause, forming swirling ideograms that vanish before meaning takes hold. The master says nothing, just gestures softly toward the storage room behind the cedar partition, a place you've never dared enter, until now. You pass beneath the Norran curtain with reverence, bowing instinctively to whatever memory lives beyond it. The air inside is not stale, but dense, compressed with the gravity of objects that had waited too long to be noticed. Shelves climb to the ceiling, each groaning under the weight of jars, boxes, scroll tubes, and bundles wrapped in silk too faded to identify. Some containers bear names in archaic kana, others are blank, as if ashamed. But one that whispers, Source calls you not by name, but by pulse. It is a humble jar, no taller than your forearm, with a pitted grey glaze and a lid sealed in wax stamped with a chrysanthemum crest. Beside it rests a folded sheet of rice paper, yellowed and brittle as moth wings. The ink is barely legible, the brushstrokes tentative, as though the hand that wrote them had doubts. For use only when the moon forgets its name. You turn to call for the master, but he is already there, crouching in the doorway like a shadow given form. It's time, he says, voice hollow from disuse. That jar hasn't spoken since the year of the starving wind. The tale he tells is one the records omit, a famine so severe that even the ghosts grew thin. 1786, when crops failed and rivers dried, when Kyoto's noble families drank ink and chewed lacquered wood to fill their bellies with illusion. Monks recited sutras not for salvation, but to remember the taste of rice. And in a village high in the Ir Valley, a tea master did the unthinkable. He brewed a final chaji using bones ground to dust. The jar you now hold was said to capture that tea, not its ingredients, but its essence, the soul of survival distilled into something too potent for taste. Legend claims it remembers hunger so vividly that opening it brings back the ache, not to the body, but to the land. Crops wilt, chickens forget to lay, children cry at nothing. It's not evil, the master insists, rubbing his palms together. Like tinder, it's a reminder. He prepares the room in silence, every tatami swept, every utensil arranged to face true north. The scroll in the alcove reads only, cove, the ideogram for mouth, though whether it means hunger, silence, or the gateway to the world, no one says. When he breaks the wax seal, the temperature drops, not a chill, but absence, the way light feels just before an eclipse. The scent is not rot, exactly, something more noble, like the echo of miso barrels, left untended, or incense burned in, desperation rather than prayer. The tea within is not liquid. It moves like smoke, but clings like oil, pooling into the chowan in spirals that resist gravity. No water is added, no whisk used. The master merely lifts the bowl and tips it toward you, his hands trembling only slightly. When it touches your lips, the effect is immediate. Your mouth floods with sensation. Bitter sesame, burnt chestnut, the sweetness of carrots pulled too early from frostbitten soil. Your belly contracts as though it has never known food, as though every meal you've ever eaten was fiction. Your throat closes, then opens, then closes again. The master does not stop you. Let the ache bloom, he whispers, as your spine curls inward like a fern recoiling from touch. And it does. You remember every hunger, not just your own. A farmer's child during war rationing, a monk whose temple ran out of rice offerings, a stray dog licking lantern oil from the street. The craving is collective, ancestral. You sob into your sleeve, not from pain, but from a fullness so profound it shatters. The tea has done what no meal could. It has fed the ghosts. Later, after you've retched into the kenzui and buried your face in the garden soil to remember the taste of roots, the master reseals the jar with fresh wax and buries it once again, but not in the storage room. This time, it goes beneath the camellia tree, next to the old brazier rusted from forgotten winters. He presses the earth down with his palms, murmuring to it like a lover. One day, he says, you'll need it again. The moon always forgets. That's why we write poetry. Inside, the tea room is no longer cold. A kettle hums. A cloth flutters slightly near the tokonuma. And in your hands, the chowan, though empty, feels heavier than before. It starts with the wind, but not the kind that brushes leaves or rattles shutters. This wind is internal, folded into your chest like a forgotten scroll, unrolling now with every breath. It rises one morning while you polish the iron kettle, and you feel its shape rather than hear it. A spiraling hush that tightens your ribs and draws your eyes toward the northeast corner of the garden. There, behind the stone basin and the crooked persimmon tree, is a thicket of bamboo you never noticed before. Tall, too tall for this season. Their stalks shimmer even without sunlight, and the joints pulse faintly, like breath. The master has already vanished into his morning solitude, leaving you to your rituals. And so, you bow to the brazier, rinse your fingers in the chozubachi, and walk barefoot into the grove. The air changes at the threshold. It smells not of bamboo but of old paper and charred feathers. Each step forward is absorbed in moss, not the soft kind, but dry, almost desiccated, as though it remembers a fire long ago. The stalks lean slightly toward you as you pass, not menacing, curious. Then the sound begins. Not flute, not wind chime. Something in between, a language without consonants, woven from hollow rhythms and trembling cadence. At first, you try to pass the melody, looking for Patansan old chant, perhaps a fragment of Heian poetry, but it defies logic. The grove is speaking not to your mind, but to your history, and it knows things about you that you have never told the master, or anyone. You were born on a night when all the crickets vanished, your mother's milk soured after 3 days. You did not speak until the age of 6, and when you did, it was to say the name of a river no one had taught you. That river later flooded its banks and uncovered bones. The bamboo remembers. Each stalk contains a single breath from someone long dead: samurai, potters, tea couriers, blind shrine maidens. Their last exhalations were caught in these green chambers, preserved like perfume. When the wind passes through, it is not wind at all, but memory finding form. You place your hands on the nearest stalk and feel it thrum against your palm. The kanji for your name begins to form in your thoughts, but it warps, shifts, becomes something older, not a name given, but a name returned. You are not just you, you are the reincarnated steward of this place, the one who once carved cups from ice and brewed tea with ash. The grove knows, it remembers the calligraphy of your bones. As you step deeper, the grove narrows, the light fades until everything is muted jade. Ahead, a clearing opens like a held breath. In its center stands a single altar of unpainted wood. Upon it rests a tea scoop made of amber, a material no tea master would use, too soft, too alive. But this scoop is different. It pulses faintly, and when you lift it, it sticks to your skin as if unwilling to be touched by anyone else. The scoop carries weight, not just physical but temporal. You see flashes boiling kettles in burned-down temples, a woman's hands pouring tea in the snow, a monk dying mid-ceremony while his guests continue sipping in silence. These are not dreams. They are deposits, layered like lacquer in the object itself. The scoop is a record, and now you are part of it. When you turn to leave, the path behind you is gone. The grove has shifted, as bamboo always does, growing imperceptibly until the familiar becomes labyrinth. You do not panic. You sit, instead, beside the altar, and prepare a makeshift ceremony. No tatami, no guests, no sweets, only the amber scoop, a bowl carved from petrified cherry wood, and a pouch of tea leaves you always carry out of habit. You boil the water by will alone. It bubbles without fire, heated by the friction of memory and ritual. The scoop touches the leaves, then the bowl, and you pour with a stillness learned over lifetimes. There is no whisk. The tea folds into itself like ink in snowmelt. When you sip, the grove bows. The bamboo bends as though in reverence, each stalk creaking softly in unison. The wind halts. The light returns. The path reopens. But you are not the same. You walk back barefoot, the scoop tucked into your obi, a new weight beside your navel. The garden looks smaller now, like a painting you once stepped into and have now stepped out of. The persimmon tree bears a single fruit, unripe but glistening, a sign, a seed. The master waits at the threshold. He says nothing. He never does after these journeys, but he sees the scoop. His lips part slightly, and for the first time in years, you notice fear in his eyes, not fear of you, but of what you've remembered. Inside, the tea room is warm. The kettle sings a note of acceptance. You sit, you wait, you understand. The bamboo has spoken, and you have listened. Not all ceremonies begin with invitation. Some begin with recognition. The fire begins not with flame but with center, whisper of camphor and cedar, and something older, stranger, like burnt parchment soaked in sandalwood oil. You don't see the smoke at first, you taste it. It moves through the tea room, like memory, threading itself between tatami seams, curling into the crevices of clay jars, and coiling beneath the iron kettle, like a cat preparing to pounce. The master doesn't speak. He merely lifts his sleeve and reveals a faint shimmer running along the veins of his forearm, a line of ash that glows red in places, like the embers of an argument left unresolved for centuries. This, he tells you with a glance alone, is not an accident. This is Yaksadamtha, destiny of fire. Every tea house, he once said, carries within it the seed of its own cremation. The moment a wooden beam is carved, it begins to long for the flame. Everything in the room seems to agree. The walls creak with anticipation. The bamboo ladle warps ever so slightly in its stand. Even the lacquered Natsun tea caddy sweats under the candle's watchful eye. You feel a pulse beneath your feet. The building isn't burning. It's remembering how, and yet nothing collapses. No roaring inferno comes to claim the scrolls or melt the bronze. Instead, the fire reveals itself like a guest arriving late to an elegant gathering, courteous, dressed in grey robes of smoke. It enters through the hearth and settles by the master's side, nodding politely before reaching into the air and drawing out a single thread of flame, so thin it might be mistaken for a crack in reality. With this thread, the fire begins to stitch. What it sews is not cloth, but time. You watch as the walls flicker, buckle, and smooth again, not in ruin, but in revision. The paper screens become translucent with scenes not from the present, but from every moment this tea room has ever held. A poet coughing blood into his tea during the winter of 1787. A spy from the Bakumatsu era, slipping poison into his own bowl to avoid capture. A woman in 1932 cradling her stillborn child in silence as the kettle steamed on, as if nothing had changed. The master gestures, and a gust from nowhere lifts the ash in a perfect spiral. Koji no Kitoba. He murmurs fire's language. You realize the smoke is speaking. You just don't yet know how to listen. He hands you a piece of charcoal, thick, ridged, still warm from the storage urn, and motions toward the tatami. You hesitate. He nods. So you kneel, press the charcoal's edge to the straw, and begin to draw. Not pictures, exactly, not letters, just motion, curves that feel familiar, angles that resist. Your fingers move without you. When you stop, the floor bears a sigil, not from any alphabet you know, but it hums with recognition, like the ache in your joints before a storm. The master exhales once, then sets the sigil alight with a pinch of powdered mugwort and a spark. Struck from flint, the drawing burns cold. No heat, just light. Cold, like the inside of a bell. Cold, like regret. When the flame dies, nothing is left but a circle of blackened straw and the scent of green plum. That's when the master begins the ceremony. He calls it the fire tea. He wears gloves stitched from the silk of fire-resistant moths. He uses a kettle cast from meteorite iron and a whisk made not of bamboo, but of a phoenix feather trapped in glass threads. He does not boil water. He coaxes it, whispering to the pot until the liquid sings in overtones, notes you feel more than hear, and the tea itself. It's made from leaves grown on the slopes of Mount Osso, where the soil is half ash and half mythology. Each leaf is smoked over pine needles, then aged in urns, sealed with beeswax and curses. The powder is so fine it refuses to settle, rising in ghostly spirals no matter how long it rests. He measures it with a spoon carved from a tengu's horn, then places it in a chowan so black it seems to drink light. One splash of water, a single turn of the wrist, and the surface blooms not with foam, but with an image. You see your own face, but older, more tired, wiser, perhaps. And behind it, faces that might be ancestors, or future selves, or simply memories of people you've never met, but miss all the same. The master hands you the bowl. It's warm, yes, but in the way that an embrace is warm. You lift it, sip, it burns, not your tongue, but your thoughts. Each swallow strips something away, first your name, then your birth date, then the list of things you once feared. You are left with silence, and in that silence, the fire finally speaks. It tells you where the bowl came from, a kill that exploded before its first firing, killing the potter and birthing only this single survivor. It tells you why the rim is uneven. A child touched it before it cooled, leaving behind a fingerprint warped by centuries. It tells you the bowl's secret name, the one it has never spoken aloud. You forget it immediately. That's how you know it's true. When the tea is gone, the master doesn't ask how you feel. He already knows. He gestures instead to the corner of the room where the kettle once sat. In its place, there is now only a pile of ash, and atop it, a single sprig of new green tea, reborn. He crushes it in his palm, adds the fragments to a tiny paper pouch, and slips it into your robe. For the next fire, he says without speaking, the tea room begins to dissolve, not collapse, not burn, but fade. The edges of the walls blur like ink left in rain. The tatami becomes mist. The scroll in the alcove, previously blank now, bears a single character, drawn in ash, one washaru, to forget. The master turns away, steps into the hearth, and vanishes without drama, as though swallowed by a memory too large to hold. And you wake up alone in the garden, under a sky that smells faintly of smoke and plum. The ground beneath you is warm, but not scorched. Your hands bear no burns, but in your mouth lingers a taste like flint and honey and regret. You open your robe. The pouch of tea is gone. In its place is a featherglass threaded, still warm, and a message written in charcoal on your palm. Next time, bring water. The path to the garden of forgetting begins not with a door, but with a refusal. The master denies your request for another lesson, simply shaking his head and uttering one word: overfull. No explanation, just that, as though you, the vessel, can hold no more. Then he hands you a sandalwood token carved in the shape of a drooping camellia. Its scent lingers on your fingertips longer than memory should allow. Walk until you find the place that doesn't recognize you, he says, already turning back. Inside, the door slides shut with a sigh. So you walk. The world seems slightly out of sync. The wind carries no scent, yet makes your eyes water. The moss underfoot shifts subtly with each step, as though deciding whether to let you pass. The temple's garden extends far beyond its known boundaries, becoming a landscape of hidden thresholds and folding dimensions. Bamboo groves open like stage curtains. Stone paths appear where none were a moment ago, and time stutters. You find yourself humming songs you don't know, your hands twitching with rituals you've never learned. You walk until even the sky seems unfamiliar, palette of purples and oranges, never named in any spectrum. At last, you arrive. The garden of forgetting is nothing like the others. No carefully raked gravel, no manicured bonsai or symbolic placement of rocks. Here, the ground is uneven, soft with centuries of fallen leaves. Trees of unknown species sway without wind. Blossoms hang upside down, or flicker like candle flames. A fox with a mask-shaped face watches you from the branches of a tree that smells like burned sugar. The air tastes faintly of ink and old dreams. In the garden center, there is no pond, no fountain, only a mirror laid flat upon a pedestal. Of bones it reflects, not your face, but everything you've ever tried to forget. You kneel before it. At first, the images are mundane. Spilled ink on your 5th birthday, the look on your teacher's face when you lied about stealing chalk. But the mirror deepens. It begins to show you forgotten ancestors that resembled yours, but older, sadder. You see a woman cradling a stillborn child during a typhoon, mouthing a lullaby that survives only in your nightmares. A soldier burns a letter without reading it. A monk renounces the world, but keeps a photograph hidden inside his robes. These aren't your memories. Or maybe they are. The mirror does not differentiate between personal and inherited forgetting. All grief is shared in the end. Then the tea appears. Not in a cup, not poured. It condenses on the surface of the mirror, bead by bead, until it forms a shallow pula liquid with the consistency of melted pearls. You're meant to drink it. Of course you are. When you lean forward, the scent overwhelms you. Parchment, winter apples, smoke from an unfamiliar war. You sip directly from the glass. The flavor is unbearable. Not because it's bitter or sour, but because it reminds you of too much. Each mouthful returns a piece of you you'd willingly lost. You remember the name of your first imaginary friend, the exact shape of the scar on your grandmother's ankle, the sound of rain on a school roof in a year that no longer exists. A voice not the master's whispers from the trees. To forget is mercy. To remember is obedience. The fox leaps down silently and approaches. Around its neck is a collar of woven hair, human hair. It places its paw on the mirror and closes its eyes. The reflection ripples, revealing a different scene. You, sitting in the tea room, much older, hands shaking as you prepare a bowl for someone you can't see. Your eyes are hollow with discipline. The movements perfect, the joy absent. You blink, and the vision disappears. The fox is gone. In its place is a box of Polonia wood, bound with a red ribbon. You open it to find a tea scoop carved from what appears to be antler. But when you hold it to the light, faint ridges suggest it was once part of a human rib. The scoop is stained with something dark and granular. Instructions are inked inside the lid. 1 measure only. Used twice, the drinker forgets themselves. Used thrice, the world forgets the drinker. Beneath the scoop is a pouch of matcha, the color of bruised jade. You return to the tea room not by walking, but by closing your eyes. When you open them, the master is already boiling water. He doesn't ask where you've been. He doesn't comment on the scoop in your hand. He simply nods toward the chawan already set out, one you've never seen before, glazed with whirls of matte gold that resemble a fingerprint pressed into mud. You measure precisely 1 scoop. The powder hisses as the water strikes. As you whisk, the aroma rises. Cinnamon, bark, stone fruit, tears. You hand the bowl to the master. He drinks. Silence. Then he speaks. That garden wasn't planted. It grew from regret. You nod. The tears come later, while sweeping the threshold. That night, the moon doesn't rise. In its place, a black disk that emits no light, only the memory of warmth. The wind shifts. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings 13 times. You find yourself kneeling by the mirror again, though you don't remember returning. The mirror now reflects a version of you wearing the master's robes. You are instructing someone younger. Their hands tremble. You smile. You wake before dawn with dirt under your nails and the taste of ink on your tongue. You wake to the scent of burnt lacquer and camellia oil, as if the night had penned something in secret while you slept. The master is already seated at the hearth, but this morning he wears black from throat to ankle, his robe stitched, with patterns so subtle they seem to move only when you look away. He doesn't speak. Instead, he gestures toward the calligraphy alcove, where the usual hanging scroll is absent. In its place stands a tall, narrow screen, painted not with ink, but with charcoal rubbed into silk with such obsessive care that it shimmers like obsidian. A single phrase appears above the grain of smoke. Those who write with fire do not erase. You're still reading when the master snaps his fingers and, wordlessly, motions you toward a low table on which lies a box longer than a sword, older than memory. Its lacquer has cracked like dried blood. He opens it with reverence, revealing something between a brush and a blade. The handle is carved from the root of a tree, said to grow only on corpses of failed emperors, the bristles made from the tails of foxes who died laughing. The master calls it kasaboku, fire brush, and lifts it with both hands, like a priest bearing a relic. When he strikes it lightly against the table's edge, ash sifts from the tip, as if it had been dipped in the remains of dreams. Today's tea will not be drunk. He tells you it will be transcribed. From the back of the room, he brings forth the ink, not stored in a bottle, but grown inside a cube of volcanic glass. He cracks it open with a single blow, revealing a pulsing jelly of indigo and coal that smells of iron and rain-soaked paper. The ink does not flow, it broods. It coils in the well of the suzerain stone like a serpent remembering its first kill. You try to look away, but the master dips the brush and begins to write, and the room leans in to watch. He does not write in kanji or kana, nor in any script you recognize. His characters ripple and fuse, shaped like bones and wings and teeth. One stroke resembles a plum blossom at the moment of detonation. Another, the curve of a throat mid-gasp. The words hiss on the page, smoking faintly without consuming it. He pauses only once, to glance at you with eyes so still they reflect not light but silence. Then he gestures for you to take the brush. Your fingers rebel. The handle is warm, too warm, as if it remembers being wielded in war. The ink clings to the bristles like a living thing, reluctant to obey. When you touch brush to paper, the first character fights back, splitting into tendrils, shrieking in no sound. You can name, but the master nods, pleased. It remembers you, he whispers. You wrote this once, long ago, before breath, before bone. As you write, the air thickens. The sliding doors expand and contract as if breathing. You hear the scratching of ghost quills, the flutter of wings with no birds. The walls fade to parchment, and you realize you're no longer in the tea room, but inside the story you're telling. The tatami dissolves beneath your knees, replaced by shifting ink dunes. The ceiling melts into a constellation of forgotten punctuation marks. You press forward, transcribing what you see. A tiger weeping beneath a cherry tree, a girl with a teacup for a heart, a storm made of unread letters. Then comes the name. It appears unbidden, rising from the brush like steam from boiling water. You do not understand it, but you know it. It belongs to you, and not you, to the hand that holds the brush and the centuries that shaped it. You trace the name 3 times, and with each repetition, the paper deepens in color from pearl to soot, to something like the bruised petals of a midnight iris. The master stops you there. He takes the sheet and folds it into the shape of a lotus, then ignites it with a twig plucked from the hearth. But the flame burns backward, making itself, the fire retreating into the paper, folding it tighter and tighter until it becomes a coal no larger than a tear. He places it in the kenzui wastewater bowl, and when it hisses, the sound is that of your own breath escaping. Now the tea has been written, he says. The rest is silence. You don't speak, not even when he leads you outside into the ink-dark garden. The night is smeared with fog, but the path is visible, painted in lines of salt and rust. The master walks ahead, barefoot despite the frost, carrying a brazier in one hand and a hollow gourd in the other. He pauses beneath a withered maple and sets the brazier down. The fire flares briefly, casting shadows that pirouette and bow. From the gourd, he pours something into a black lacquered balti. Yes, but tea brewed from ashes and ink. The scent makes your eyes water. Burnt rice, ocean wind, sandalwood from a forgotten shrine. He hands it to you without ceremony. This is what remains when language dies, he says. Drink it, and forget how to lie. You hesitate, but only for a moment. The tea is both thick and insubstantial, a paradox you swallow without resistance. Your throat burns not with heat, but with meaning. You taste every word you've ever misused, every promise you never kept, every silence you offered when truth was demanded. You weep not from sorrow, but from the weight of finally being emptied. The master watches, unmoved. It is not comfort. He only waits until your sobs subside, then gently touches your chest with one ink-stained finger. This is your last page, he says. From here, we write without hands. As he turns away, the brazier sputters and dies. But the ink remains faintly on your tongue, staining your breath, writing its name into your lungs with every exhale. You descend the stone path barefoot, as the master instructed, though the ground is slick with dew and whispers. The garden you step into is not the same one you remember, if it can be called memory. Where once there were pines and moss, now there are willow branches suspended from the sky, not rooted in soil but dangling as if the heavens themselves have frayed. Between their silvered leaves, you see no stars, only reflections, yourself, multiplied and inverted, walking, beside you, ahead of you, behind you, never quite touching. The moon has not risen, but the world glows faintly, as though lit from beneath. The master does not follow. He has handed you a key before vanishing behind the paper wall, though you cannot recall where you placed it. It is likely not in your pocket. Perhaps it is beneath your tongue, or stitched into your shadow. The garden yields no direction. Each stone is carved with characters that change the longer you gaze, some ancient and unreadable, others resembling your handwriting, but trembling as if afraid of your recognition. You move forward. The path narrows until it becomes a seam in the earth, leading you to a round wooden lid, flush with the ground, an old well cap, bound in brass and sealed with wax. It smells faintly of lotus and rusted bells. You kneel, place your hand upon it, and feel not wood but pulse, faint, steady, and entirely aware of you. The key, wherever it hides, makes itself known. You feel it in your palm, not a metal object, but a gesture, a breath held in the chest for 100 years. You release it, and the lid opens inward, not upward, as though the well has chosen to swallow itself. A rope ladder descends into darkness. You climb. With every step, the air grows heavier, not with damp or depth, but with memories and others. The descent does not tire you. Time does not pass here. There are no echoes. There is only the sound of brushstrokes, unceasing and slow, being made somewhere far below or inside. When you reach the bottom, your feet touch not stone but mirror. It is not metaphorical. You stand on a circle of silver so perfect, it reflects not only your body but your intention. The mirror reveals the thoughts you refused to think. They cluster around your feet like forgotten children, a kindness never spoken, a cruelty disguised. As wisdom, a moment of awe you buried beneath rational thought. You do not recoil, you observe. Above you, the well remains open, but it is so far away now, it appears as a coin thrown into the sky. Then the voice speaks, not aloud, not in words, but through ripples in the mirror. Each syllable blooms in the surface, forming calligraphy of water and shadow. The voice is older than your blood and younger than your breath. You have reached the ink that bleeds upward. You do not reply. You kneel and place your hand on the mirror. The reflection does not mimic you, it waits. It stares back with eyes that are not yours, but which know you intimately. The reflection lifts its own hand and draws a door with one finger. The surface parts like silk, revealing not another room but a night sky inverted. You step through. The world beyond the mirror is not a place, it is a question. You find yourself walking along a corridor of torn scrolls. The walls are stitched from pages written in every language you've never learned. They hum faintly, not from wind but from dreams trying to escape. One scroll flutters open as you pass. It shows a battlefield, but the warriors are shadows, and they fight with ink instead of swords. Another reveals a tea house submerged beneath an ocean, its guests seated calmly at the table as koi swim through their ribs. You understand none of it and all of it. At the corridor's end, you enter a room shaped like a bowl turned upside down. The floor is sand, the ceiling painted with an hourglass that leaks upward. In the center, a single object, a ceramic tea jar, sealed with silk and wax, so old it seems part of the earth. You kneel beside it. Around the rim you see characters etched, not with tools but fingernails. Some are blurred, others still bleeding. One line draws your breath away. The tea inside remembers its first water. You unseal it. There is no smell, no smoke, no ceremony, only dust. But when the dust touches the mirror of your breath, it glows faintly, and you see that it is not tea at all but time ground into powder. Time that once lived in the hands of monks and ghosts. Time that has watched empires pour and spill. Time that has memorized every footstep you've ever taken, even the ones you tried to forget. A bowl waits beside the jar. You fill it with the dust, but you do not drink. Instead, the dust begins to hum. It spins itself into a small vortex, shaping pictures in the bowl's surface. Your face, from 5 centuries ago, painted in red ink. The master kneeling before a dragon, a mountain, swallowing its own shadow, a tea leaf falling in reverse. You close your eyes, and the pictures enter you not as visions, but as debts. The bowl is empty, and you are full. You rise, no longer alone. The other versions of your reflections, memories, past guests of this same ceremony walk beside you as you return up the well. They whisper through your skin. They leave fingerprints on your spine. You reach the garden and find it changed once again. Now a field of inkstones, each with a single drop of blood at its center, not yet dry. The master is there, waiting. He nods. You bow, and for the first time, your shadow bows with you. He places something in your hands, a fan, plain and closed, carved from lacquered bone. On its surface, a final line. When the tea ends, the writing begins. The fan unfolds itself. Each rib is a season from your life yet to come. You see summer nights you've not yet lived, autumn regrets you will cradle like warm stones. You close it gently. The master offers no explanation. He merely turns and vanishes into a gust of camellia-scented smoke. You remain in the garden, alone but not lonely, with dust on your fingers and silence in your throat. The wind carries the faint clink of teacups, far away or within you. You are not finished. You are beginning. You wake, or something like waking. There is no bed beneath you, only a tatami mat shaped like a spiral. Light pours from nowhere, not daylight, not moonlight, but the soft radiance of things understood. You are dressed in robes not made of fabric but of breath, sighs woven into layers, warmth drawn from the dreams of trees. You do not remember arriving here, but that no longer troubles you. In this place, arrival is less important than readiness. Before you, the room, not a room you have seen before, not the sparse wabi-sabi architecture of past ceremonies. This space curves inward, like a closed hand, like the inside of a shell that has been listening for centuries. The walls are paper, yes, but the paper moves not flapping, not fluttering, but shivering in slow patterns, as if recalling stories it once heard spoken between sips. You move your hand toward it, and a trail of light follows your fingers, illuminating calligraphy that was not there before. The characters say only one thing, written in every language you've ever nearly learned: you are ready. The words fade, and she enters. Not the master, not a guide, not even a ghost. She is not dressed in kimono or robes, but in layers of wind and time, a figure formed from the condensation of memory. Her face is unfamiliar, yet you know her deeply. She carries no tray, no cup, no bowl. She does not speak. She only sits. Where she sits, a tea set assembles itself from dust and gravity. a black bowl with red glaze, a whisk made from lightning, a kettle shaped like the memory of thunder. There is no fire. The water boils by remembering what warmth once was. She begins. You are not asked to participate. You are already participating by being. Each movement she makes pouring, whisking, offerings, not performance but invocation. The tea is not green. It is not even liquid. It is light, condensed into a surface tension that trembles with insight. When she places the bowl before you, you do not reach for it. You bow, and it rises to your lips by itself. You sip. You taste your own forgetting. The bitterness is familiar, but behind it hides something else, laughter perhaps, or grief left unresolved. The flavor shifts as it enters you, becoming memories you never lived. A snowfall in Nara, a temple bell tolling 12 years too late. The final breath of someone who once called you beloved in a language now extinct. Each sip reduces you become simpler, more precise, less narrative, more shape, less name, more echo. Around you, the room begins to exhale. The walls dissolve into forests. The ceiling becomes an endless procession of clouds, each one painted with a story you almost told. The floor dissolves into water, shallow and clear, reflecting not your face, but the sky of your longing. The woman across from you smiles, and the smile is not kind, not cruel, it is true. She offers the bowl again. You do not hesitate. This time, the tea tastes like silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of stillness. It is the silence of moss growing on forgotten statues. The silence between lightning and thunder. The silence before a child speaks your name for the first time. You close your eyes and see nothing, and in that nothing, you find completion. When you open your eyes again, she is gone. In her place, a scroll. You unroll it with fingers that feel both ancient and newly born. The ink is still drying, still whispering. There is no text, only a single brushstroke, fluid and deliberate. It curves like a question mark, but ends like a promise. You recognize it. It is your own mark, left on a wall you do not recall painting. You fold the scroll and rise. The world around you collapses gently, not as destruction, but as return. The tatami fades. The walls become light. The room folds itself into a grain of rice and vanishes into the folds of your sleeve. You step outside, and you are back. The garden, Israel again, or at least solid. Stone paths, bamboo fences, the scent of plum blossoms, the quiet hum of water moving somewhere just out of sight. The air smells like endings, or beginnings. You have no cup in your hands, no robe on your shoulders. You are dressed in your original self, bare and unfinished. You walk. The master waits by the gate, not younger, not older, just waiting. He says nothing, but his silence nods to you. You bow deeply, not as ritual, not as performance, but as gratitude. He steps aside. The gate opens. You do not pass through. Not yet. You turn once more to face the garden. A breeze stirs the leaves. You listen carefully. There, just beneath the wind, the sound of water being poured into a cup that no longer exists. You smile and step forward. Later, in dreams or in still moments between footsteps, you will return to that room, not in memory, but in gesture. A slight tilt of the head, a breath held before speaking. The way your fingers curl around a warm cup. You won't recall the taste, or the names, or the voices, but you'll feel the rhythm of it all. The invitation to pause, to pour, to pass, through the silence between heartbeats, and in those fleeting instants, the tea will return not as drink, but as presence. You were there, you are still there. The cup disappears, but the warmth remains. End of script. Sweet dreams.